Good morning everyone. Basa na tayo ng ating libro guys. Kapwa ka Filipino, magbasa tayo ng ating history. History of the Filipino People by Agoncillo and Guerrero. Today is 02 February 2023. Yung note ko nakalagay back to original reading 5th edition. History of the Filipino People, Part 4, the American Period. Topic number 18 na tayo, the Wood Administration. Nandito tayo sa paragraph. The administration of Leonard Wood, 1921 to 1927. Basa. The administration of Leonard Wood, 1921 to 1927, hardly had the storm of protest over the reports of the mission subsided when Leonard Wood was appointed Governor-General to succeed Harrison. Wood had shown his keen administrative ability as military governor of Cuba. In recognition of his achievements as chief of the Rough Riders in the Spanish-American War, he was appointed to train the men who would compose the American Expeditionary Force to Europe when the United States entered the war in 1917. Wood should have been chosen as the force's commander-in-chief, but being a Republican, he was bypassed by Wilson in favor of General John D. Pershing. In 1920, he threw his hat into the political arena and lost the Republican presidential nomination to Harding. After Harding's victory, he offered the governor-generalship of the Philippines to Wood. Wood was not interested in the position for the sought appointment as Secretary of War. Failing to get the war portfolio he had accepted even prior to heading the Wood Forbes mission, the provostship of the University of Pennsylvania. Harding, who recognized his competence and efficiency as administrator, prevailed upon Wood to accept appointment to the highest executive position in the Philippines. Wood was the exact antithesis of Harrison. Unlike his predecessor, who ran the government in accordance with the spirit of the Jones Law, Wood conducted the government only to the extent provided by the law. Wood pursued a policy of cooperation with the Filipino leaders in the manner contemplated by the Jones Law. Throughout his administration, he sought to recover the prestige and executive powers which Harrison has surrendered to the Filipino leaders. In pursuance of this goal, Wood incurred the opposition of the latter, particularly Quezon, who were not particularly willing to have the powers gained in the past 8 years drastically reduced. Despite Wood's efforts to continue his policy of cooperation, it was very obvious that a break was inevitable. The break in the form of the cabinet crisis resulted from two reasons. The first was due to the Filipino leaders' objection to Wood's use of the powers of his office, not so much because he used them arbitrarily or harshly, as because he used them at all. Very often and intractably in matters concerning the country's domestic affairs. The second, more important reason did not arise from Wood's interpretation of the Jones Law as is commonly thought, but from the political situation confronting Quezon. The cabinet crisis. During the early part of 1923, Quezon's leadership in the legislature was anything but stable. Quezon's own men were disenchanted by his readiness to effect a rapprochement with Osmeña to preserve his hold on the legislature. The Democrats had gained considerable strength. In the coming special elections of 1923, the Democratic candidate Juan Sumolong was certain to trounce any candidate put up by the Nacionalistas. In addition, the people had grown indifferent to politics. He soon felt that there was a critical need to shore up his leadership. Something clearly would have to be done to revive interest in the political situation in Manila and the United States. The opportunity came with the famous Conley case, which signaled the rupture with Wood and resulted in the cabinet crisis. Ray Conley was a detective in the Manila Police Department who was charged with immorality and misconduct in office. He was subsequently suspended from office by Secretary of the Interior Jose P. Laurel, and at Wood's insistence was brought to trial. Though the court dismissed the suit against Conley, Laurel requested Wood that the man undergo administrative investigation. Wood created an investigating committee but declared that Conley should be reinstated. The administrative investigation exonerated Conley and recommended his reinstatement. Wood ordered Laurel and the mayor of Manila to do so with provisions for the payment to Conley of his salary covering the entire period of suspension. Laurel endorsed the committee's recommendation to the mayor for execution. At the same time, in protest against Wood's direct action, Laurel submitted his resignation. The mayor, without acting on Laurel's recommendation, also resigned. A final report on the case rendered on July 14, 1923 decided that the continuance of Conley in office was inadvisable. Wood subsequently retired Conley from the service with all privileges, including accrued leave. Laurel's resignation was enough to precipitate a government crisis. The Filipino members of the cabinet alarmed at Wood's arbitrary and undue encroachment on the rights of a cabinet officer, consulted with the presiding officers of the legislature. Quezon saw the chance to embarrass Wood and strengthen his waning leadership among the members of the legislature. He formed a committee composed of himself as Senate President, Speaker Rojas, Senator Osmeña, and Secretary of Justice Abad Santos, which called on Wood and demanded a redefinition of cabinet responsibility. Wood said that under the Jones Law, the cabinet was responsible to the Governor-General and not to the legislature. On July 17, upon Quezon's advice, the Filipino members of the cabinet submitted their resignations. Senate President Quezon and Speaker Rojas resigned from the Council of State. Quezon, acting as spokesman for the group, accused the Governor-General of his policy and desire to intervene in and control even to the smallest details in the affairs of our government, in utter disregard of the authority and responsibility of the government, of the department heads. Ulitin ko lang guys in the affairs of our government, in utter disregard of the authority and responsibility of the department heads and other officials concerned. Wood accepted the resignation, declaring caustically that they were part of an organized and preconcerted attack upon the authority of the Governor-General. The Filipino leaders denied the accusation and maintained that they merely wanted to protect their hard-won prerogatives. A special mission headed by Rojas was sent to Washington to present Filipino grievances against Wood. In October 1923, a joint resolution by both houses of the legislature demanded Wood's recall and the appointment of a Filipino Governor-General. Coolidge cordially welcomed the mission and graciously accepted the resolution, but sustained Wood's decision and gave him full political and legal support in his difficulties with the Filipino leaders. The Board of Control controversy. One of the difficulties Wood encountered was the problem of withdrawing government participation in business. His motive, contrary to the Filipino leaders' allegations, was not based on a belief in the principle of laissez-faire in business. Wood was simply carrying out Secretary of Warwick's instruction to get the Philippine government out of business. Wood, deeply concerned over the losses incurred by the government-owned industries, proceeded to carry out Wick's instructions. Wood was convinced that the Board of Control, which managed this government corporation, was unconstitutional. Even so, he tried to bring about the sale of the corporations without abolishing the board. In a letter to Quezon and Osmeña on December 6, 1921, Wood urged the disposal of government corporation and reorganization of the Philippine National Bank. The Philippine legislature, however, was opposed to his plan. On November 9, 1926, after receiving a favorable opinion from the Judge Advocate General and the Attorney General of the United States, Wood declared that the Jones law vested supreme executive control in him and it was unconstitutional for the legislature to compel him to share his powers with the Board of Control. On the same day, Wood abolished the board. Quezon and Osmeña took the case to the Supreme Court of the Philippines. In April 1927, the Philippine Supreme Court upheld the legality of Wood's decision, and on May 14, 1928, the Supreme Court of the United States sustained the decision of the Philippine Tribunal. Bukas na itong gabi to question. Mahaba ba? Mahaba eh. Ulit. Bukas na to guys, the video question by everyone. God bless.